Morning everybody, how you doing today? In this episode of the show, we're going to talk about the cybersecurity time crunch. Now, I was reading an interesting article by Colin Campbell, writing for Polygon, about the team at Epic Games that makes Fortnite, the global phenomenon battle royale game that's been really at the forefront of competitive gaming and online gaming for about the last 12 to 18 months. And this article wasn't very flattering. And it wasn't about the game, it was about the culture around the teams that build the game. Now, video game culture has long had this real challenge, at least video game developer culture. It's had this significant challenge, especially around AAA, like multi-million-dollar budget games, of having crunch time. And crunch time refers to the period leading up to the launch where they can't move the launch back. It's a hard deadline, and people start to work a lot of overtime. They're really trying to push hard to get something across the finish line. Now, I know what you're thinking, like overtime is a reality in most jobs, and it can be. That's not a bad thing. What's a bad thing is when that overtime becomes the expectation. The cultural norm is that you work all of these hours even though you're either compensated for less or you're not necessarily coming in with eyes wide open. You think you're agreeing to something that's 40 hours a week and it's really 80. Now, Colin's article for Polygon highlighted the fact that Epic's teams were not prepared and the culture was not set up to live with the popularity of the game, to deal with it. The fact that they are essentially in crunch time nonstop. It is always crunch time for this team. So they're always working crazy amount of hours. They're bringing contractors in. They're burning people out. People are quitting. People are leaving. People are not getting renewed at their contract because they're just simply exhausted. They're not even applying for it because the culture now expects that nonstop crazy amount of work, like the 12-hour days, working over the weekends, things like that. Now, before this goes any further, don't get me wrong. I am a proponent of working hard. I think you really have to put in the time in order to get the results you want. But I'm also a really big fan of working smart, working efficiently, making sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time. So you might have noticed that this episode is coming to you on a Friday and a little later than normal, rather than the Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Now, that's because I took a couple days off. Middle of the week, my partner and I and some friends we took a road trip to go see an artist that we all really wanted to see, really enjoyed it, had some good drinks, ate some good food, had great discussions, saw an awesome show. It was really refreshing. It was nice to be able to set things up so that we could leave the home life for a little bit, leave the work life for a little bit, and recharge in the middle of the week. It's important to take care of yourself. Now, we're going to get a little personal for a second here, but before we do that, I want to cover a couple key points. There's also a recent quote from Jack Ma, who is of Alibaba fame, talking about this new phenomenon of 6x12. So 12-hour work days, 6 days a week, and he was cheering its benefits. And now I know a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute, that's just in China. It's a totally different cultural acceptance. Very, very true. But working those kind of hours is not uncommon in the Valley around tech startups, really pushing for that to get across, to be first to the market, to be first to try to go after that, exponential growth in order to be the next unicorn $1 billion+ valuation. So 6x12 may be a uniquely Jack Ma proposition, appropriate for the culture in which his business is run, but I don't think it's an outlier. Further to that, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. He runs VaynerMedia. He started with Wine Library TV. He's big on social media. He's big on business strategy. He's also sort of the godfather of this hustle culture. And I think hustle culture gets a really bad name because a lot of people are like, you shouldn't just be hustling. They're either, so forth. They're like, hustle all the time. Or so against it because they're like, oh, you shouldn't be hustling. You should have work-life balance. And I think both those views are a misunderstanding. Gary's a big proponent of working efficiently, working smartly, and putting in the work. And if that means putting in the hours sometimes, that means putting in the hours. And that if that creeps into the night, it does. But he's also just a big proponent of having personal time and having family time and having friend time and going hard at that as well. He's all about really focus. And I think that's a huge thing, and that ties back to today. It ties back to my personal aspect of this. It ties back to the cybersecurity story, because why I wanted to tell you this, I know this is sort of not our normal cybersecurity and privacy topics, but I think this is a massive issue for the cybersecurity industry, and we've actually talked about it before. It'll pop up here for those on YouTube. We've talked about burnout before, and I think it's sort of rumbling underneath. And with this understanding that there's a cybersecurity skills gap and we don't have enough people to fill the available roles, I think it's going to get worse. And the problem there is, while we don't have enough people to fill the roles as they are set up today, I think not enough people are asking, my key point of this entire video is, are we doing the right work? Not afraid of work. I don't think you should be afraid of work. I don't think you should be afraid of putting in the extra time when it's required. I think you should be making sure that you're putting in the time doing the right things. So, personal story. For those of you that have the unfortunate or the misfortune to watch me on video, you're used to seeing me like this. But right now, I'm carrying about 30 extra pounds compared to what I should be. And that's not old man dreaming of, glory sports days where I was at a playing weight. No, this is just reality based on health. All of the 40 plus years of injuries and, creaks and moans in my body are catching up with me because I took my eye off the ball. And a couple years ago, I was so eager, so ambitious to make an impact, to further my goal of helping people and teaching people security and privacy and helping them understand that it doesn't need to be as complicated as it put out to be, and helping sort of shape the new digital future, that I was traveling a ton, I was working long hours, I was spending time with the family, but then after they went to bed, I was working again. And just taking my eye off the personal ball and burning out on a sort of insidious, subtle level. It wasn't just like all at once, bam, I'm done. It was this sort of gradual thing, and a big part of that was carrying this extra weight because I was traveling a ton, and you grab crap food at the airport and you're not sleeping as well and your clock's all messed up, and it really took a personal toll. And I'm finally walking that back, and I'm not trying to get sympathy here. I'm happy with where I am and my path forward, but I think that there's a lot of people in this same boat, and I think it comes down to this whole, you need to work, you need to put in the hours. Yeah, you need to work, but work smartly, work efficiently. So I've gone on a personal crusade for my own work style to get really, really ruthless in the projects I'm taking on and the tasks I'm taking on. I'm trying not to take on other people's things when it's not required, if I'm not the only one who can deliver it. And I'm also trying to manage timelines and expectations a lot better. And I think that's a far more effective way of working. And when I read stuff like Colin wrote for Polygon around the Fortnite teams, that's really planning as an issue. They know they're constantly delivering new updates, and if you can't plan and scope those, you're either over-promising and setting yourselves up for failure, or you're not setting, your team doesn't understand what they're working towards enough to make sure that they're being ruthless in what they're applying. Here's a little experiment. In your office, around your teams, go around and see throughout an 8-hour workday, just casually ask people how much actual work they do in an 8-hour day. You're going to get answers probably around the 4 to 5 hours of work effort. So instead of trying to get 12-hour workdays in, why not make that 8 hours more efficient? Be ruthless in what you're doing. Meetings are normally a huge time suck. Very rarely are they worth the time invested because you're not making active decisions. What about other activities that you're taking on? You're processing email constantly, you're responding to social media, there's notifications on your phone. All this stuff is coming through and distracting you from delivering. And if you really put your foot down, if you really get ruthless about it, I think you can be far more efficient. So you can put more work in without expanding the time. And I think that's the key to finding this balance, because if you're not finding that balance, your body is at some point just going to stop and force you to find it. I think in cybersecurity specifically, yes, the game industries have a big challenge. Yes, Silicon Valley has a challenge. But I think cybersecurity specifically, this is going to be a massive, massive problem as the skills gap, or the perceived skills gap, widens. Because in cybersecurity, there are emergency incidents. At certain points, you're going to have to work long hours to deal with an incident, to respond with it. And that's just the reality. It's a time constraint that you don't have control over. But the rest of the time, you should be focusing on delivering whatever your top priorities are. And if you can't answer why you're doing a task, or go get an easy answer from your team as to why a task is important, it ain't important. Drop it. Focus on what is important to push your mission forward. Quick personal example before we wrap up. In this process of being ruthless in what I'm doing, ruthless in my time, I've looked at the stats. I keep pretty detailed stats on what I do and what the results are over the last while. And I've filtered out a ton of stuff that I used to just automatically accept because either people asked and I didn't. It's like, yeah, that sounds fun, I'll do that. But there's a time, there's a toll on that. There's travel time. There's all these different costs that you don't necessarily total up. So I've been really trying to be ruthless and going, no. What's effective? These videos to you, they're effective. Writing blog posts, that's effective. Doing my radio column, those are kind of things that are effective. Doing selective speaking engagements, those are effective. But doing everything that I'm asked to, 100% not effective. Let's keep this conversation going, but after the weekend, because we all need balance, hit me up online at MarkNCA for those of you in the vlogs and the comments down below. As always, by email, me at markn.ca. I hope you truly have a fantastic weekend, disconnected, enjoying whatever gets your motor going, whether that's time with friends, sports, reading a book, anything. Just take some time for yourself, your friends, and your family. I will talk to you about this very important issue online next week, and I'll see you on the next episode of the show.